All right, and we are live. Good evening, our guests. My name is Lasharte Scott. I'm the CEO and president of Scott Center for Observation, Treatment, and Transition. And our mission is to continue to build the community in face of health inequities impacting communities of color by bridging educational awareness, policy, and outreach gaps between the community and healthcare professionals. We aim to eliminate preventable maternal health risks and newborn fatalities and assist individuals transitioning from pediatric to adult care and sickle cell disease treatment while focusing on their mental health. I know that was a mouthful. Uh, but this May, we have been highlighting Mental Health Awareness Month to raise the importance of addressing the stigmas and barriers in minority communities. And tonight's segment is entitled Self Care and Stigma of Mental Health His and Her Perspectives. And it is with immense pleasure to introduce my two guests. First, I would like to introduce Elijah Jones. Pronouns he, him, and his is a social worker, educator, solutionist. He is currently the senior manager programs and services with the Mental Health Recovery Service Board of Lucas County. His work has been recognized locally and nationally. He has received the Diamante Adult Leadership Award in 2020, and he was recognized as 20 under 40 in Toledo in 2021 as a top, and then in 2021 as a top Latino leader in 2022. So thank you for joining me, Elijah. And then we have Jasmine Pope, pronouns she and her. She's the owner and lead therapist of her own private practice therapy services, Blessing in Disguise Counseling and Coaching. Jasmine's mission is to help others find their purpose while pursuing emotional, spiritual, and mental healing. She is the host of the Pretty Powerful and Purposeful Conference and has conducted several shops dealing with mental health in African American communities and was the speaker at the 2019 Professional Pretty Conference hosted by Morgan A. Owens Brand. So, thank you for joining me today, Jasmine.
Thank you for having me.
So, audience, please feel free to type your questions or comments in the chat and we will respond. So let's dive in today. So I don't know if you guys been watching some of my podcasts here, but typically it's just a conversation between friends and we're just giving some advice, some different tips. So I just want to kind of dive into it. What are some of the misconceptions of therapy that we think the community or people in our communities are just, what are some of the misconceptions they may have?
Elijah, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think one misconception I think people have is that it is like this lifetime commitment. Like once you're in therapy, if it's gonna work, you're gonna have to be in there for years and years. But really, therapy is there's a number of different types of therapies. There's types that are really focused on the present problem, solution focus. So some people can be in therapy for a few months and get benefits, as opposed to some people um, choose may choose to be in therapy for years. But I think that is like one of uh, the biggest misconceptions I come about is that therapy is this very long commitment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think within the African American community specifically, we have this thought or this belief that therapy, talking about mental health, doesn't apply to, or we don't need to seek it as African Americans, right? And I think that's far from the truth. One of the people that I follow is Dr. Joy DeGraw, I think is how you say her name. But she talks about the generational trauma that we deal with, right? And so beyond generational trauma, we have the current circumstances of our own lives that we're going through, whether that's just being impacted about what's going on within the world and within our nation, as well as what's going on in our personal lives. So I think if once we get that misconception out of our minds and just say that, therapy doesn't mean I'm crazy, therapy doesn't mean that there is just all these big problems. Therapy is just another outlet for me to have a safe space where I can talk, clear my mind, and get some tips, tools, tricks, and skills that will help me be a better me. So I think that's one. I also think one of the biggest misconceptions is that you can't afford it. With insurance, with sliding scales, with EAP services, there's so many ways that you can be able to afford therapy, and sometimes without even paying out of your own pocket. So learning about that will really help a lot of people be able to take the steps towards getting good mental health.
Yes, that was great. Great answers. So let's tell people why it's important to have a therapist, or what would be the reason for having a therapist.
I could say for myself is that even the therapist needs a therapist, right? I'm not exempt from going through my own life circumstances, my own issues, and I carry a lot of weight just from the work that I do on a day-to-day basis. So I need that safe space. I also need someone that I deal with 3 R's, right? Real, reliable, and relatable. I need somebody who understands what it is that I go through on a day-to-day basis, but can also help me see the blind spots in my own life, help me to correct even some of my own negative thinking patterns and things of that nature. So just being able to maintain on a daily basis really comes from me prioritizing my mental health, going to see my therapist, whether it's once a month, every 2 weeks, weekly, if I feel like I'm in, a crisis situation. So I think those are the major benefits of it for me as far as seeking my own personal healing through my mental health journey.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. So I'll give an answer, but then I'll have to explain it because, in my opinion, not everyone needs a therapist. We're in this kind of awakening now around mental health, and we've really done a great job with reducing stigma. And there is a lot of misconception going on around there that if you're struggling, you need a therapist. And while that may be true, I always say everybody needs someone therapeutic in their lives. This could be a friend, this could be a religious figure. This is someone who you trust, who you can talk to, who you can be open with, and you know that they're not going to use what you say against you or go tell other people. But with that, there are a lot of people out there who don't have that safe person, who don't have a safe person they can talk to, who feel really isolated and alone. I think that is a good indication that you may need someone, a professional to talk to, like a therapist. Also, when your mental health is impacting your daily life, and when we are making diagnosis, that is the key, in my opinion, to a mental health diagnosis is, are these behaviors, symptoms, thoughts affecting how you live your daily life and negatively impacting it? And if so, then it might be time to go and talk to someone. So while I don't like the blanket statement, everybody should need a therapist. There are some really key things that are important for people to go into therapy for.
So one of our one of our guests, our viewers, said it's great to have someone to listen, no attachment to the situation, no judgment, or trying to compare their problems. I think that's a big piece.
Yeah.
In having, so you mentioned a religious aspect of it, and I've had my own concerns, so I just kind of want to see what's your take on it. And this is, you're free to be very open. Let me be clear. I love authentic. That's why I can give you guys questions ahead of time. So I notice a lot of pastors talk about mental health. And I think it's great that we bring these things to the forefront. But sometimes I feel that they're not equipped to give certain advice, if that makes sense. If I'm saying that right, I don't want to ruffle anybody's feathers, but That is kind
No,
of my take on it. Sometimes I think, and I'm not gonna say all pastors, but I think sometimes pastors take that step to another level. Have you guys had any experience with that, or?
So I'm a licensed minister. So I think as you were talking, you're like, let me not ruffle the feathers with the minister on here, right? But no, so it's ironic because as I'm sharing like different tips and things, this is one of the things that I was going to talk about even on my own platform is that and I think it goes back to historical context as far as having that mistrust and distrust of the system, right? And so research shows that for a lot of African Americans, um, church is their place of therapy, so to speak. It is their place of outlet. It is their place of safety. The pastor is a trusted leader for them. And so they go to them for all of their needs, whether it's spiritual, whether it's personal, right? But given in this time with all the things that are going on, all the things that we are experiencing, pastors, not all pastors, I'll say it that way, are not qualified to provide mental health counseling. They don't have the training, they don't have the credentials, they don't have the education necessarily to do so. Yes, as a minister, as a pastor, we can provide counseling based upon scripture, right? Based upon what we believe. But it takes a different aspect when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with um, psychosis and all of those different things that a person may be dealing with, right? And so it takes us to take a step further to either get that training or just say, hey, I can pray for you, I can do all of those things for you, but this is out of my wheelhouse, this is out of my scope of practice. Let me help you find someone who can. I think it's very necessary for the church across the board to become trauma informed, even if that once again does not mean that somebody in the church has to be providing counseling or anything like that, but to understand what trauma is, how do we deal with it in the moment, and then like once again being able to provide those referrals or resources for people to get the help that they need outside of the church. I love God, I will talk about Jesus all day, but I'm also going to tell you, get a therapist, go see a psychiatrist if you need medication, whatever route that it is for you to do best with your mental health. I'm going to encourage you to do that because God created medicine. God created therapists. God created these other resources for us to be able to take part in.
yeah, and you touch on so many things, and I think that this is where like the difference between therapy and therapeutic lies, and that you don't need special training to be a listening ear, someone to, you know, um, just be there and listen and hear what someone's saying, relate to their story and empathize, and kind of be with them in that process. Um, but when you start conceptualizing things, and when you start um, doing what a therapist does, that's when it gets a little different. And I would agree that there's a lot of people who probably and this can go into like, not just religious leaders or pastors or members of the clergy, but also you know life coaches, very right on the cusp of, is this therapy or is this something else? But what I thought, that trauma, becoming trauma informed is so important. It's so important for all our social institutions, because people come to them with histories and traumatic experiences that impact how they um, live in the world and perceive the world. But also, many people have been hurt by religious figures too. And there's a lot of religious trauma that a lot of our communities have to reconcile as well. So, I think therapy is very powerful because and seeing a therapist is very powerful because we have training to be able to know what the science is behind what we're saying, but also to work with you and make it make sense for your values and your culture and your upbringing.
Yeah, well said from both of you. Our guest, Miss Williams, said also to say it's okay because history says otherwise. I agree with that. I just want to make sure, and the reason why I'm asking you some of these questions, I feel that social work is already a field that doesn't get a lot of respect. Um, One, we're not paid properly. Just off the bat. I mean, I know a lot of people that are in social work who have created a lot of streams of income for themselves. However, just starting off, I think that we're not valued or we're not seen as the value that we bring to the table. So I just want to make sure that I kind of brought that to the table so people understand the difference between a therapist and a minister. And because we in the profession have worked really hard to get those credentials, and we just want to be respected. I mean, if I'm telling a lie here, please let me know. But I know, I just want to make sure that we're getting that respect in our field. You agree?
Absolutely. And as Elijah talked a little bit ago, I work with I'm also a certified life coach, and I work with or I'm connected with other life coaches, and that has always been a major concern for me. But the ones that I know are like, no, I know that this is kind of like that ethical boundary for me, that when it starts getting into, we're talking about depression pretty prevalent, we're talking about dealing with all of these different things, I need to refer you out. I'm stopping my services until you get the help that you need to deal with those mental health issues. And then, you can come back and re-engage. So I think it's also about, we've created these kind of silos, right? Life coaches are over here, social workers and counselors are over here, the spiritual community is over here. And there's a way to bridge it all where we all can work together. I've done trainings within my church. Once again, not expecting anybody to come out and be like, oh, I know all about mental health, right? But giving them the basic kind of understanding and information. Once again, we can go to the altar and we can pray about demons or however you want to put it, and double-mindedness and all of that. But when people get up from the altar, they need skills, they need coping skills, they need to understand what it is that they're going through. And so that is where I step in and say, okay, these are the next steps that you can take. Here's this information that you can take, because some people are living with these things for the rest of their lives, some people are not, and we can get them the help that they need to minimize that impact. But if we only leave them at the prayer or at the scripture, or we just gonna cast it out and keep it pushing, we're not really helping the whole person.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So, excuse me. So I had came across some statistics today. That was honestly, a little alarming. Um, we're so according to the National Institute of Mental Health, states that 20% of Black adults are more likely to struggle with a serious mental health challenge, such as major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. Um, how so? Be that statistics exist. How are you, Jasmine, specifically? How are you engaging our community in some of these tools or showing that the resources are available?
So absolutely. So when I started Blessings in Disguise, one of the things that I did, I looked into the statistics, I looked into the research. There was a lot of focus when I was getting my master's, that showed that oftentimes African Americans are misdiagnosed with schizophrenia when they should be diagnosed with depression, because there's a lack of understanding of cultural norms and different things of that nature, right? So that was something for me, being a newly licensed, well, in school, and then becoming a newly licensed social worker, that I wanted to change. And so I was afforded the opportunity to begin my private practice. And I built my private practice on the slogan Black mental health matters, because we don't often put it in that perspective, that our mental health, and not, once again, it's not a all mental health matters, right? We get it. But particularly for me, and knowing that my population is dealing with this, my population is still dealing with mistrust and distrust of the system because of things that were done 40, 50, 60 years ago, even longer than that. I want to make sure that who's out here. So not only promoting myself, but generally on social media every few months, I just do a post that says, hey, in the state of Ohio, particularly in the city of Toledo, these are people that I'm connected to that are African American therapists, that you can go see. Everybody's not going to come to me. One, I have a lot of personal connections, right, and want to keep those boundaries and things. But there's enough of us out here to see. I also try to, and I work with primarily African Americans as therapists, bringing them into my practice so that they have an avenue, and eliminating a lot of the barriers that stop us from being involved in therapy, private practice, the billing and all of those types of things, so that they can get their foot in the door and start and get the ball rolling, right? Because that is another thing. Research shows that only 2 to 4% of practitioners in the mental health field, such as psychologists, psychiatrists, therapists, counselors, all that, are African American. But we are 13% of the population, and like you said, 20% of those who are dealing with that, particular statistics of mental health. There's so many more that we could go into, right? So I want to be a part of changing the trajectory of the people who want to enter into this field, that want to provide services and do it in an ethical manner, but also doing it to where our people feel comfortable coming in these doors, sitting in our seats, and being able to not only take our expertise and our the skill that we have, but also implementing it in their lives and making it better.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Jasmine. So for you, Elijah, and I hope I'm saying this right. I know a lot of the verbiage changed. So do you guys consider Latino community, Latinx? I just want to make sure I had the right terminology.
Either is fine.
Okay. Things change. So I just want to make sure I'm being respectful. But in your community, what is it that you see is a barrier?
Yeah, so there are a number of barriers. We kind of the biggest barrier that the Latino community experiences, especially in the Toledo area, there are a lack of bilingual and bicultural therapists. So, lack of Spanish speaking therapists, or even people who speak other indigenous languages, can't access services. Um, and while agencies and services are available for interpretation and translation, it's just difficult to have kind of these conversations about mental health through that. And then in general, there's a lack of just bicultural therapists too. So even those who speak English, we just don't see a lot of Latinos going through our social work and counseling programs, or even becoming psychologists, at least in this area. Now, there's other parts of the country where there, a lot of them going through, like in Texas and California, but in areas such as here, especially, there are in Ohio, there are large populations of Latinos, especially, because of migrant workers and whatnot. But we just don't have them going through programs. And then, the ones who do struggle to pass licensure tests, and we know this, that issue's no stranger to the African American community either. But several people whose first language isn't English, but might be Spanish, and they might be able to do the test better in Spanish. It isn't available in Spanish. So I talked to a lot of several social workers from Puerto Rico whose first language is Spanish and they learn English later, really struggle with the test because you can have a dictionary with you, and English-Spanish dictionary, but it's just another barrier to even getting licensed to provide a service to people who need it.
Yeah, that's horrible.
Elijah, you bring up a good point. Oh, sorry, LaSharde, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Just making sure. I wanted to see if you wanted to chime in on it.
Oh, you bring up a good point, particularly with licensure. A part of my dissertation is really understanding how we can work towards eliminating the institutional, all of the barriers across the board, right, that are preventing African Americans from getting licensure. And so one of the things that is talked about in that is that in 2022, that was the first time that ASWB actually looked at statistically based upon race, based upon gender, all those different components, the passing rates, right? And so I think it's, as we're having this conversation, and LaSharde, I appreciate the fact that you're bringing out, okay, in the Black community, in the Latinx community, because so many times we try to just say, blanket it, right? But we have to have these types of conversations to really bring awareness to what's going on. African Americans have so many issues from the time of application into a college program all the way through the process that many of them just don't even make it through getting to college, right? Because of the barriers that they face, whether it's admissions fees, whether it's testing to get in, whether it's, okay, I get in, but now I don't have any support. I don't know how to access the supports, right? Or I'm in classes where I'm the only African American and I'm being taught about my history from a negative connotation. But if I say something, then I'm the angry Black person, right? So now I don't speak up and I feel uncomfortable. So now I don't want to be a part of social work, or I'm not in school anymore at all. Maybe I'm facing other financial issues, right? But we're seeing all of these things that lead to the disparities that are in the licensure rates. And so, that's another reason why I advocate so hard the way that I do. That's why, like I said, my dissertation is going to be focused on that, because we need more of us, and not specifically just African Americans, but people of color in the field, because we are a growing population of people who need the services. And research also shows that when you are seeing someone that looks like you, has experiences just like you tend to fare better in your therapeutic experience. You're able to stay longer, and you get the help that you need because there are those people there. So that is one reason why, this fight is necessary for all of us to continue to engage and to change how social work, mental health, therapy, counseling, all of that is viewed.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. You got anything you want to say, Elijah, on that?
No, I was just thinking, like, we know that there's power in being with people who can relate to you. We see that in the peer support movement. Like, peer support, the power of peer support is having someone who has been through it. And so, we can relate that to therapy too, and it would be more powerful for people to be in a room with someone who they know has had similar struggles or the same struggles. So yeah, I know. And I sit on the board of NASW Ohio. We've talked about licensing and testing, and a lot of states are trying to do dramatic things to reconcile the issues with the ASWB exam as a barrier to licensing. But I think we don't know what we don't know. And I think, Jasmine, that is a great dissertation topic, because we, as a profession, as you were saying earlier, we're not really valued and we can look at our value based on who is dominating this profession.
Yeah, women. That's what
Women.
it is. It's
Mhm.
women.
And the men typically are minority men.
Yep.
Yeah. So, it's the issue is systemic.
Yeah.
Because, if social work were dominated by white men, we would all be making 120 a year.
Yep. Minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum. We'll come in making that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
agree. Yep. But that is why I'm trying to make sure, we change the narratives ourselves. Sometimes we have to just put it out there. And this is why I host this. I like to be authentic. I don't want to censor anything. Because I feel sometimes we have to be quote unquote politically correct. And I don't always want to be politically correct. That's just me. I don't always want to be politically correct because to me, I think we water it down when we're not being our most authentic self or we're not speaking from a place where we feel comfortable and safe enough to do so. So then we're doing a disservice because we're not putting everything in the forefront.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's my little 2 cents on
Mhm.
on that. But I would like for you each to kind of share these tips may work in either of the either of your communities, but what are some tips to kind of keep people one to start seeking the help that they need, whether it's through therapy or, as you stated earlier, talking to someone that they feel that they are safe with. I just kind of want to give some self-care tips in regards to taking care of your mental health. So either of you can start.
Glad you can go.
Now, um, so yeah, I think there's a number of when I think of taking care of yourself, it really needs to be intentional, and I really encourage people to kind of set goals for themselves. um, look from a wellness perspective, what are those areas in your life where you don't feel so well in?
Mhm.
Is it your spiritual side? Is it your physical side? Is it your mental health side? Is it your relational side? Are you in relationships that are not helping you but actually harming you? And we might call those toxic relationships. So look, really be aware of yourself and intentional in setting goals. Where do I want this to be, or where do I want to be health wise? But some simple things, and these are going to sound like so simple, it's like, why are you even saying this? But I think they're good reminders. Like, we need to be hydrated and we need enough sleep. Sleep is so underrated in society. And we are in this grind culture where we even turn our hobbies into revenue streams. And I know part of that is because we live in we're victims of this capitalist society where we always have to be, making money. But that wears on our physical and mental health. So I think making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're doing activities you enjoy just because you enjoy them, and making sure you're staying hydrated. I think people. When I was younger, I went to the hospital because I was dehydrated, and I learned that people, that's not that uncommon. People go to the hospital because they're hydrated, and it's like that's probably one of the things in a society like this where we have where we can have uh, readily available drinking water, that we're still allowing ourselves to get hydrated. So I think those are some simple things that can really have long-term benefits for our well-being.
Mhm. I think I would say just find a moment to pause. Like Elijah started talking about, we are in a hustle mentality society, Black superwoman, gotta do it all, right? Um, but we often don't just take a moment to pause and really see and reflect on where we are in life, right? Being able to say, hey, I am noticing that I just have a lot going on. A lot of times I will do this activity that I started doing in these trainings I do, but I also do it in some of my sessions. What's on your plate, right? Oftentimes when I start that, people, I'm like, write down every role, every title, everything that you do, right? And so people will write, well, I'm a mom, I work, um I do yoga and I go to church, right? And I'm like, okay, but what all do you do in church? Oh, I'm on the usher ministry. I'm in women's ministry. We got Bible study on Tuesday. I'm in the finance department. Okay, what do you do as a mom? Well, I'm not just a mom, I'm a wife. So that means I'm taking care of the kids, I'm cooking dinner, I'm doing all these different things, right? And so by the time we end, that list of 4 or 5 things has now turned into 30 or more, right? And at the end, they're like, oh, wow, now I realize where my time is going because I feel like, I'm not really doing a whole lot per se because of these kind of siloed areas. But in those areas, you've got so many different things that when you look at it, now you're seeing why you might only be getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Now you might see why you're burnt out at work because you're not able, you're not taking care of yourself physically. You haven't gone to the doctor and gotten your vitamin D checked or other minerals and all those different things to make sure that you're healthy internally, right? We're doing all of these things that we don't recognize that we just aren't putting ourselves first. And so being able to take that look for yourself, being able to also say, um, hey, I'm looking at my life and I'm seeing that family is a big aspect on it, but I can't help family all the time. I can't do everything for them. I can't be everything for everybody. I got to take a step back, right? And so being in this place of my life, especially this week with losing 2 family members, dealing with, one of the family members having had mental health issues and substance use and things of that, it took me to a place of pause. I'm very quick to be like, nope, I gotta go to work. I gotta see my clients still. And I just had to, hey, I can't, not today. I need to take this moment, right? And see what I need to do for myself. And so once again, whether that is for the person who feels like they are way too overwhelmed, they've got that past trauma history, they know that they've been dealing with maybe some depression or whatever, going to a therapist is going to be that step for you, right? For some, maybe it's not. Maybe it's just going to the gym, getting some exercise, releasing those endorphins and all of that type of stuff. There's so many ways that we can deal with our mental health beyond just going into a therapy office. But I'm one to advocate, sometimes even if it's for a short period of time, just being able to kind of see, because like I said earlier, we all have our blind spots. We all have those things where we don't know that it's bothering us, right? A lot of times, especially within the African American community, we minimize trauma, right? So we live in neighborhoods where there's gunshots every day and there's death all around us, but oh, that's just normal because I live in such and such area. No, that's not normal.
Yeah.
No one should have to live that way. And you're talking about, oh, well, I can't sleep at night because you're worried. You're having nightmares and flashbacks and all of those different things. So being able to have someone that can say, hey, even if it's before you go to a therapist, hey, I think, you might want to do something about that, right? I think, but it takes us to take that pause, right? Because if you're still in the hustle and bustle of it all, you're not going to stop. So
Yeah.
you got to get yourself to that place to stop, reflect, and then take action on whatever it is that you need to do to better yourself.
Yeah, that was all good feedback from both of you. And just to piggyback, you are absolutely right. I always say if you grew up in those neighborhoods, you probably suffer from some type of PTSD or something. It's possible, but I think it's important. You both spoke on the way cultural experiences and the way that we were brought up. You both had
Mhm.
kind of spoke on that. So to kind of bring that back to the forefront. So let's just say, for instance, we may have some viewers where their family were or they are just really against therapists in general. So we know, maybe religion is the only way that they see. Um, what advice would you give to that comment?
So for me, I would say that oftentimes parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles had these negative mindsets, right? They did the best that they could with what they had, but I'm no longer, or you're not walking in the shoes of your parents, your grandparents. Um, you're walking in your own shoes and you're living life how you have been living life. And so you have to take those steps that are necessary for you to be better for yourself. Um, growing up in a family that, I can remember asking my dad at 16, can we go to counseling? I think we just need to sit down and talk to somebody, and being told no, to now being, what am I? You know what I mean? But I had to take that step for myself to get beyond what, that one, even if it was just that one time of being like, no, we don't go to counseling. Like, no, I got to do something different because I'm dealing with some different things. Right. Once again, looking at the combination of the two, that you can have both. You can have your spirituality, your religion, however you want to, put that, and you can have, whatever resources or means that you need to take to prioritize your mental health. So there doesn't have to be an if or and or, but it's, I can do this all together to get what I need.
Yeah, I think when we in school we learn, and even in our professional lives, we talk about evidence-based practice. And there's this common misconception that evidence-based practice is just what's available in the literature. And if the literature says it works, then it works. But really, truly evidence-based practice is the what's available in the scientific literature, along with the the client's culture and values, and the professional's own clinical judgment. And I think that is a piece that people forget and um, mistake, that um, quality care is really um, about working within your culture, making sure it makes sense for your culture, and part of that is identifying and clarifying values. Um, and I know that sometimes, I've worked with people who their value set is a lot different than their family's value set. And there's no judgment there, but they have to do things. And that's just, uh, this human experience. We have to do things. If we're going to prioritize our own wellness, we have to do things that are aligned with our values. And some people value, their religion over everything. Okay, we can work with that. Some people value freedom and autonomy over everything. Okay, we can work with that. Some people value um, relationships and being in a relationship. Okay, we can work with that. But really, I think values is, understanding, identifying, clarifying values is really kind of how we work with a lot of issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those are some good points. So we're from the Toledo area. So those that are watching might be in other areas, but excuse me. Toledo is such, and I mean this in the most respectful way, it's so close-minded in a lot of areas. I'm gonna speak as far as to mental health right now, but I guess my question to you will be, how do we get involved in the community here, in the Latin community, in the Black community? How do we bridge the gap between these two communities?
So I would say it's starting where you are and then bridging out, right? So a lot of the initial work that I did, once I, really found my passion and my focus for mental health, and particularly bridging the gap between ministry and mental health, was to start in my own church. Hey, I noticed this. Can we change this? Or next time we have this situation occur, we might want to do this so we're not triggering the person. You know what I mean? Like, just looking at little things like that. That led to doing trainings, right? And with this world we started it pre-pandemic, but even once the pandemic hit, of being able to be virtual, right? Now we have a way to, just like this platform, reach more people with the things that we do. So beginning where I was, then it was like, okay, you can connect with this person or that person. So I got involved in a couple different initiatives with NAMI, right? And so that built other connections. I think, and I can't remember how Elijah and I connected initially, but I brought Elijah in when I was teaching at one of the local universities. And so that gave a different perspective on to our students on how to deal with different cultures, different ethical issues, all of those different things. I think we talked about social justice as well in that conversation, right? So now they're exposed. And so they're exposed to Elijah. They have his contact information. Now they have a person of point of contact when they're needing something, right? So I think it just takes for us to come out of our own comfort zones, build greater connections, working together. Like I said, I'm not one to be like, I'm over here doing my thing. No, I want to bring as many people with me. If I can't do it, I'm going to refer out to someone else. If it's something that I'm not knowledgeable on as far as a speaking topic, which, at that time, the total aspect of social justice and speaking in regards to sexual orientation, gender identity, all those different things, that wasn't necessarily my wheelhouse. And I don't want to be disrespectful to anyone. So that was a piece that I also brought Elijah in for, right? So being able to, once again, know where your strengths and weaknesses are, knowing who your connections are, and being able to pull it together to just build this greater connection among people that will help us continue to advocate for mental health in all communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah. There's this quote I reference often, and I don't know who said it, but it's go to the people, learn from them, love them, start with what they know, build on what they have, and when the job's over, um, the people will say they've done it themselves. And I think this is a real model for how we engage with communities. So often systems go to communities and say, I want to help you. We might do that with mental health. We'll go to a community and say, oh, there's a lot of depression and anxiety and the pandemic and trauma. You all need help. And the community's like, we don't know you. We don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So I think, understanding that we have to go to people, we have to listen to them, learn from them, get their perspective, and build authentic relationships and trust. And that's the key. It's not the most quality relationships we have in life are just because, not because I need something from you or you need something from me, but we're just two connected people. And we need to apply that even to systems. We need to, be a part of the Latinx community, even if more Latinx people aren't coming into treatment. We need to be part of the African American community, even if more people aren't coming into treatment, because we need that relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
not about, what can I do for you, or what can I get from you, or what can you do for me. It's a relationship can just be.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep.
I agree.
I think Elijah, in connecting a couple things that you've talked about through this time, right? In social work, in the courses we teach, that the therapeutic relationship is the biggest piece of all of it, right? And you talked a little bit earlier about evidence-based practices. We can learn all the evidence-based practices we want, DBT, EMDR, CBT, yada, 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 right? But if you don't have that relationship, there's no connecting point for it.
Mhm.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And so that is one of the things, particularly when clients come through, however they come through, right? I don't want to just jump right in and say, hey, here's what I can do.
Mhm.
I got all these skills and I got all this information. Like, no, let me learn you.
Mhm.
Let's just take a few sessions and just talk and get to know you. Because a lot of times, people feel unheard. They don't feel seen, right? And so if we treat the people whatever avenue that we're going to, whether it's they're coming to see us for therapy, whether we are just going into a church or another agency or whatever and trying to figure out, what's best, we got to learn from them first. We have to learn who they are. And so I think it's, imperative that as much as yes, we do pay for these degrees, we pay for all the continuing education, and we can and I love having the alphabet behind my name, right? But at the end of the day, the alphabet behind my name means nothing if I'm not meeting the people where they are to be able to utilize all those letters of the alphabet.
Right.
Yeah. Good points from both of you. So we have a few minutes left, and I always like to leave on a positive note. So a couple things. One, I want you to tell people how they can get in contact with you if they want services. And then two, I want you to leave them with a piece of positivity, some type of advice that you have for each of your respective communities or just the community in general, whichever you choose, but leave with some positive advice. So I'll start with you, Elijah.
So you can get a hold of me by, you can always contact the Mental Health and Recovery Services Board of Lucas County. You can also look for me on LinkedIn. That's kind of where I am on social media. Part of my mental health is not being on Facebook all the time. So, but the piece of kind of positive advice that I give to everyone I work with is that we're allowed to experience the full spectrum of human experiences. We can feel happy, we can feel sad, we can feel all of that. And when there's an emotion that stays too long, that is impacting us, we can go get help for that. And two, it is okay to be good. There's so much pressure to be excellent, to be the best, I follow this one Black creator on TikTok, and she ends it when she says, "Black excellence is exhausting. Follow me for Black mediocrity." And I love the dichotomy because so, in minority communities, we're always told we have to be better, we have to be better, we have to be better. And I think, it's okay to be good.
Appreciate that. You, Jasmine?
So if you would like to stay connected with me, you can find me on Facebook. My business page is Jasmine Lynn Enterprises. Personal page is Jasmine Lynn. Instagram is listed below at the @j.lynn.a. My website is www.blessingsinDisguize.com. DisguiZe is spelled DisguiZe. When you go there on the main page, there's an orange button that says request appointment. And that's how you can schedule an appointment with myself or any of the clinicians that are a part of Blessings in Disguise, as well as just, find out more information about what it is that we do. I think the biggest thing that I would say, as a part of what we've talked about is that we all have our own journey in life. And so your path is not my path, and my path is not your path. But as long as you take the path that is meant for you, you will end up where you need to be, right? And so for some of us, the path includes therapy. For some of us, it includes our therapy and our spirituality. For some of us, it takes to start with just reading a book, watching a TikTok, watching a YouTube. But do what's best for you. Take those small steps that will lead to bigger steps that make you who you want to be and give you the life that you desire to see. Every one of us is here for a purpose. Don't ever feel like you're not. Your purpose is just for you, right? It's for you. It was created for you to reach a specific group of people, and your life is a reflection of that, the good, the bad, the ugly. It's all a part of your purpose. And so keep walking in purpose, keep walking that path that is designed for you, and watch where you go.
Thank you. Thank you both. I am so grateful to hear both of your perspectives on mental health. That's why I named it his and hers perspectives. So, I'm pretty sure anybody that was watching tonight probably learned a couple key points. And you both gave really good advice on both ends, regardless of what community you're part of, I felt like. So hopefully if you're watching that you take those techniques, those, the advice that was given and you utilize it in your life to what you think is suitable. So I just want to thank my guests again for coming on, talking to my my audience. But we will be back on June 12th with Ray Bakler. I know I'm saying her last name wrong, but June 12th, we'll be talking from caregiver to CEO, in light of World Sickle Cell Day. So stay tuned for that. And once again, thank you, Jasmine and Elijah, for coming on. Share the video. They're on all platforms so that we can kind of get some more people to come on. And if there's a topic that you're interested in, reach out and let me know, and I'll make it happen. So you guys have a great night.
Thank you, LaSharday.
Thank you.